Come on.
That was my first touchdown.
Come on.
Making an impact on these young kids' lives. Like I told them, I said, you know, interact with the kids when you guys come here, ask questions, you know, don't be afraid to, you know, be silly and, you know, just come down to their level. So, I mean, I said just for them to come and see you guys, it's going to mean the world to you.
I remember that. Yeah.
We're back with one more down. Today we have Coach Tom Tedder, number 26, out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania's Baldwin High School. Coach Tedder, in his youth, plied his trade as a tailback and fullback during his time in high school. Also participated in track and field, and then comes from a solid family in those hardworking blue-collar parts in Western Pennsylvania where steel is made and hard guys come from that environment. Coach Tedder was a teammate of mine my first year of college at the Edinboro University of Pennsylvania. A solid fullback, great team guy, really a leader for young Black guys coming into that university environment. Always looked up to you like a pseudo big brother because of the way that you carried yourself. And I appreciate all these years later, your personality has remained intact. You were very open and receiving to being a part of this platform. And I just want to express some of my appreciation to you for that on the front side of that.
Absolutely.
We've been on a little bit of a hiatus for a little bit, but we are glad to get back to it. Glad that it's you to jumpstart our platform. And, we have our busy superintendent, Dallas Saunders, my partner on this platform. It's good to see you back in the fold and get back to doing what we do in tandem.
Well, it's good to be here. And, I'm interested to, hearing a little bit about you and your travels and some of your experience, Coach. It's always intriguing to hear about different educators and coaches and, being in a different part of the country and how it relates to what we do. Right. So I'm excited and interested to hear where our conversation goes.
Sure.
When we generally start off with our guests, we love to get a feel for who the man is and what brought you to that point. You have parents that I think, most people would love to have parents like you had in your life. So if you would like to start there with your family dynamic and kind of take us into the beginnings of who Tom Tedder is, I'd love to sit back and hear it.
Sure. And I appreciate you guys having me on this platform, and really excited to tell my story because a lot of people don't know my story. But born and raised in Pittsburgh, PA, was raised in the suburbs of Pittsburgh, the Baldwin area, Baldwin Whitehall area. And, my mom she was the only Black educator in Baldwin Whitehall for 30 plus years. I mean, it says a lot about how she grew up and all that she had to deal with. My dad was from Morgan, PA, which is a little suburb country area in the southern end of Pennsylvania. And really, with them two getting together, basically put me in a situation where they wanted me to have a good upbringing, but at the same time wanted to instill in me the values that are really what I am today. My dad was a hard-working guy who taught in the inner city of Pittsburgh, and then also LTV Steel. So he made sure that I was a part of that upbringing as far as being a hard worker and always being on time. My mom instilled in me the music qualities. Always was involved with athletics and music. And, probably the only person that I know of I think there was about two of us who did football and played in the marching band. So I would do marching band on Tuesday nights. I'd be there from the crack of dawn and probably wasn't getting home till about 9 o'clock that evening. I would leave after I got done with practice. I'd get up there and get involved with the drum line. And so, I probably have done, I don't know, it's just a little different track than the more, what normal people do. As far as, being involved with athletics and music. But I'm gonna tell you right now, it's really shaped me to who I am today. I'm a firm believer that I tell kids, do what you want to do. Does that make sense? As long as it's productive and it's going to keep you out of trouble. So, do what makes you happy. And, it's really showed me what I've done. I went to Edinboro and started off as a communications major. And in my second year, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. And before I went to Edinboro, my mom was like, I really think you should do music ed because it's something that And of course, as a child, you're going to do what you want to do. Does that make sense? And then I ended up changing my major to music education, and really enabled me to be an educator. And I always knew that eventually I was going to get into coaching. I did that for 20 years as a music teacher, coached and did music. So, getting a music job was it really wasn't like hard, but sometimes it was a little difficult. I remember my first head coaching job when I went to Westport High School in Ocala, Florida. They actually they wanted to start up an orchestra program. So how many head coaches are going to start up an orchestra program and still be a head coach? I thought that was kind of cool. You know what I mean? So it's just a different avenue. PE teachers come a dime a dozen, and those jobs are hard to find. I'm trying to say, but it enabled me to get a job as a music teacher. I think after my 20 years of teaching music, I've kind of like redefined myself and gave myself a different look. Went ahead and got a certification in special ed, and right now I'm about to take the PE GACE for PE. I really don't want to be in the gym because I don't want to have to deal with a lot of the foolishness that takes place in the gym. I just really want the master's pay, but currently trying to work on obtaining my doctorate degree at this present time.
When you talk about that foundation and for what you just explained, the multiple hats that you wear as an individual and, progressing your career, you made reference to your father being a steel worker and a teacher at the same time. And then, your mother being steadfast and staying in her career for over 30 years. Does that drive and that push to do those things and handle all of those hats start with those two people right there?
I'd have to say that it did. Again, my dad he would go from 7 to 3 at school, and then he'd be at LTV Steel going from 4 to 12. And then on the weekend, sometimes he would just double out and go 4 to 12, 12 to 8. That's tough work right there. But it showed me that those are some of the things that you're going to have to do as a father. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, your job is to provide, and that's all there is to it. You know what I'm trying to say? So, it just showed me you got to be a tough nut in this world. Because one thing I tell kids now, life is hard, and I'm just being honest with you. I don't care how you're trying to draw it up. Life is going to be difficult, and it's going to show you some stuff, and you got to be ready for it. And if you're not a go-getter, the world's going to eat you up. That's just how it is. So that's one thing I can say that my dad put in me with that. And then, with my mom, she was always just consistent. That's one thing I learned from her, is about the consistency of just being the person that she was. And she impacted a lot of lives in Baldwin. I'm not even going front. She just that's just the type of person that she was. I mean, that's one thing that people always said, you know, especially when she passed, that how she just impacted lives. And I hope I'm doing the same thing as an educator and as a coach, you know, just trying to do my part.
Yeah, you know, as you were talking in some of the background that Ron gave to me, I guess as I get older, I start to appreciate the people who don't take a traditional path, right? That recognize, you know, some of the things they're good at, what their passions are, but then there's also the outside influence of, if I'm a football player, I can't do this. If I'm in the band, I can't do that. You know, and as I get older, like that, I really appreciate that, because, you know, you start to feel your own interests and your own things that you have passions for. So to do that at a young age, how was that your own confidence? Was that the influence of your parents? Because I don't know of too many head football coaches that are also music teachers. And I mean that in a complimentary way.
Oh, yeah. Trust me. I mean, believe me. I mean, listen, don't feel bad. I remember applying for jobs. I'll never forget, I applied for a job at Sun Valley High School in outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. And I thought I legitimately had a good shot to get this job. I remember they were an up-and-coming school, just started brand new, you know. So I called up there, and the AD said, "Oh, yeah, I like what you do in football-wise. So what do you teach?" I said, "I teach music." And I swear to God, guys, the phone hung up. And I was like, I'm sitting on the phone like, wow, I mean, that's it? So I called back, and he never answered back. So, I mean, you know, those are just life lessons that you just say, okay, well, you know, next job. And I kind of allowed that to fuel me. Someone's going to hire me, and it's not going to matter whether I teach music or not. They're going to look at me from, you know, just the content of, hey, I'm a good coach and I can get the job done in the classroom and on the field. So, I mean, I think having disciplines of being a music teacher and, you know, trying to be a head coach, I don't know, it's just who I was. And, you know, it made me tougher. I'm just going to keep it real. It just made me tougher.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think that it shows a well-roundedness, right, as a human being. And you know, that's, I think we get into those elements of, you know, head football coach is a history teacher or a PE teacher, and you know, you get into a point in life where you appreciate the fact that the well-roundedness of application. And that's just kind of what I wondered, where that confidence came from to just do what you wanted to do and say, you know, somebody's gonna hire me for me. Because that's not always easy.
Yeah, you're right. It's not. I mean, you just got to have a mindset of, look, this is who I am, love it or leave it. And, you know, if you want me, you want me. If you get me, you're going to get one heck of a coach. If not, oh, well, if I see you down the road, I'm going to do everything I can to beat your head in. I mean, that's just how it is. You know, I remember when I had actually applied for that Westport job. And, you know, at the time I was about to leave Independence High School in Charlotte. And, you know, they said, well, if you don't get the job, would you still come on staff? Not really. I'll stay back at Independence and give me another ring. If you do hire me, it'll be a blessing. It'll be a win-win, the way I see it, either way. So, I mean, I don't know. That's been the confidence for me as far as just, you know, I am who I am. And if you like it, great. And if you don't like it, don't worry about it. I'll see you later in life, you know?
You know, let's roll back a little bit and talk about the evolution of the athlete, Tom Tedder. You know,
Sure.
where does that foundation get formed, and what is the basis of your athletic identity early on when you first start venturing into it?
Early on in sports, I mean, I started off in baseball, and I still love baseball to this day. You know, I'll watch a game on TV in a minute. I like the game. I mean, that was my first organized sport. And, I mean, I've always had a love for baseball, but, you know, growing up, especially in Baldwin, you know, I sat the bench a lot. You know what I'm trying to say? You know, so most coaches want to just play their son's kid or their friend's kid. I'm just going to be honest with you. You know, now they'll put me in for a pinch run. Like, I didn't see what the point in. I saw what the point was. You guys think, oh yeah, he's fast. He's going to steal second and third, and then we're going to get a run home by a ground ball, hit the second or shortstop. Does that make sense? So I mean, I always kind of looked at it like, what's the point? What's the fun in that? Does that make sense? But after that, I went into I tried wrestling in middle school, and I'm gonna tell you, the guy they had me paired up with had the worst body odor I've ever smelled on a human being, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And I remember going home to my mom. I said, "Mom, I hate to say it, but I'm about to quit." And she was like, "Why?" And I was like, "This guy just stinks. Like, I can't do this anymore." So she was like, "Well, if you quit, you're gonna have to do something else." And I was like, "All right, well, I'll go out for basketball." And I knew I wasn't really that good at it. I mean, I was all right. You know, I can do a layup or two, hit a J once in a while, but I mean, you know, ain't too many 5'10" like basketball players. You know what I mean? Like, just wasn't that. And I remember the following year, we had indoor track at the middle school level. And I said,
Oh, wow.
I'm definitely doing this. So, I mean, I enjoyed going to those meets. You know, we had meets down in like West Virginia, University of West Virginia. Sometimes it's Slippery Rock. So, I mean, that's how I really got involved. And then, you know, when it came to football, my dad was like, "You're not playing rec ball because I don't want, again, friends are going to play their friends' kids." Does that make sense? And he saw the writing on the wall and was like, "You're going to play when you get to middle school because it'll be teachers that'll be evaluating you, and they're going to play the best players." And, you know, I started off in 7th grade, and I'll never forget my first touchdown in 7th grade. I spiked the ball. I don't know why I did it. I just did it. But I'll never forget I got back to the sideline, and Coach Thorne, that was his name, he said, "You just spiked my ball." He goes, "You're going to run around this entire field and until I decide that." And it taught me a lesson: never spike the ball again. So I mean, here we are in the middle of a middle school game, and I'm running, I'm doing laps around the field, and you know, the kids from the other team are like, "What is this guy doing?" Yeah, well, I messed up. So I mean, you know, but that was kind of my background as far as that goes. But you know, really, when it came down to it, I had a choice in high school to do baseball and football, and I just chose to do football. I just thought it was just a better avenue for me. It's what I wanted to do, and you know, I had no regrets on that.
So let's talk about this Quad West Conference that you played in. I'm familiar with the types of individuals that come out of some of these programs around the western side of Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah.
You know, can you kind of paint the picture of what those games and what those experiences were like for you? And, you know, how did your mentality change, you know, getting a later start in the game, or organized game at least? You know, how did your mentality change and how did your abilities progress as you got to that last year of high school where you kind of broke out and shined a little bit more?
I'm gonna say early on for me, it was like, the blocking guy. I enjoyed it. I played both sides of the ball. I did corner too. I enjoy in playing corner a little bit because, look, I could shut down some folks in the WPIAL. Now, the thing about it is, in that quad A, running the ball a lot of smash mouth. Because if you looked at them clips, shoot, we were in a power I, so that's what it was a very physical conference. We're playing the likes of teams like Ringgold and Butler and Mount Lebanon and Bethel Park and Upper St. Clair. Now, I'm going to tell you, Upper St. Clair, they were good. North Hills was a juggernaut, and North Allegheny, they were pretty tough. So, we played some pretty tough schools coming out of high school. But, when I got to my senior year, I really wanted to try something different and try and be the feature guy. And, Coach Yanessa, when he got there, he kind of allowed me to be that guy. And it gave me an opportunity to further my education as far as going to Edinboro as a running back. And it's kind of funny, after running the ball my senior year, I went back to being the blocking guy. And it's okay, because the thing about it is, my second year in college, my body changed. Like, I went from a beam pole to like, oh yeah, this guy hits the weights. Like, I'll never forget my first off season at the Borough. I went from like 190 to I was like 215, but I was solid. You know what I mean? So that kind of changed, my outlook as far as the type of back that I was going to be. So. But I enjoyed every minute of it. I have no regrets. It's made me who I am. I just knew it, especially being a running back in college, like you got to go hit, you're hitting some dudes. I remember, and you remember Ross. Ross was a freak of nature at the inside. Perkins too. Them guys were dudes. So, you had to get your mind right because they were about to hit you. So, it's kind of made me who the person I am as far as, just being tough, hard-nosed.
What's that transition like from going to, your senior year, you kind of feature back, back in the 80s and 90s, it was a 3-yard war, right? Like you mentioned.
That's
correct. Then you get into college, right? Everybody who goes and plays in college, you get a realization of now I'm playing against men. And what was that mentality like from being the guy to then going and blocking and kind of seeing where I fit? How was that transition for you?
I'll give you a great story. I'll never forget my freshman year at the Borough. And I just got moved back down to fullback, and there was a couple guys ahead of me. They had, Matt Lang. He was from Buffalo, but he came into camp out of shape. So the coaches were kind of like, you're not ready to play. And then Steve Clare had actually gotten in a car wreck that summer before and had a lot of facial, he was just not looking good, nose was broke and stuff like that. But Matt Cayley was the guy. So really, it was really a 3-man game, kind of maybe a 2.5-man game to see who was going to be the starter. And I'll never forget, we were in inside period, and Coach Holman, he loved calling 42 blasts. It was just one-on-one with the mic up in there, and I'm like, man. So Kaylee gets up in there. He's the guy that I'm competing with, and don't you know, he ends up fracturing his neck. And I'm like, shit, I'm not, that's crazy. You know what I mean? Like, so I remember Coach Gerlach saying, Tedder, get in there. So, and what does Holman call? 42 blasts. So I'm like, motherfucker. You know, so I'm gonna tell you what I did. I backed out the hood. I'm like, I'm not going up in there. And I'm seeing over there, it's Ross over there. Hell no, I'm not doing it. So I backed out. And they put Lang in there, and Lang got his ass waxed. And I'll never forget Gerlach's cussing me out. Get your behind up in there, yada, 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 yada. So get back in the huddle. What is Holman call? 42 blasts. Here we go. I'm gonna get the play in regardless. So that's probably the only time we ran 42 blasts, 3 straight plays. So I mean, got in there and hit Ross as best I could, as a 190-pound freshman. But I mean, it was enough. But I mean, it taught me you got to be tough to play in the PSAC, because I mean, Ron will tell you, I mean, we had some good games in that Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference. I mean, good teams. But I mean, I think my upbringing playing smash mouth football in the WPIAL enabled me to be that fullback that gave me success early on. I mean, after that, I never saw the sideline again. I started as a freshman at the Borough, and the rest is history. So
I want to kind of touch on some of that because you're a Pennsylvania born and bred guy. As you were leaving high school, and you put up respectable numbers, and I can understand what you're saying about the toughness of the division that you played in at that level, because on our side, by the time I got to high school, teams weren't as thick and stacked with talent as they had been in previous eras. But in Pennsylvania, guys prepare at that high school level. They're invested in the game and they're trying to get to these higher levels of ball. What were your prospects coming out of high school? Did you have choices to choose from, or was Edinboro the spot that gave you an opportunity?
I'm gonna tell you right now, I had a lot of opportunities. I know Rutgers was in the mix. But I was definitely looking to get to like the MAC conference, Kent State for sure. I think Ohio University was in there. Akron was definitely my top choice. I just loved Akron. There was everything. I don't know why. To me, I mean, you're playing at the Rubber Bowl. I mean, come on, So I mean, that was exciting. And I forget who the head coach at the time. I think he was the head coach at Notre Dame for a little bit. I can't remember that guy's name, but he ended up getting fired. And then the new staff kind of just didn't know who I was. And then I'll be honest with you, test scores were an issue for me. I remember at the time it was Proposition 48. If you didn't pass, that was a big thing. Then you'd have to sit out your freshman year. I mean, you lost a year eligibility. You know what I'm trying to say? But I'm going to say this. Yvonne Tedder was not going to be denied. So what did she make me do? Hey, we're going to go get the Durham book. We're going to take about 25 minutes a night, and we're going to go over this test. And I remember at this point, things were looking kind of bleak, but Edinboro was always in the picture. I don't know why. Then the PSEC started coming. We're talking like really two schools that really were hitting me up were Slippery Rock and Edinboro. And I know you remember Gene Smith. He was a dude. He's always been a dude in my book, Gene Smith. But I remember when Gene was recruiting me, he was like, I think, you could do really well at Edinboro. And I was like, well, can I start? And he was like, I don't know about starting, but you can compete. That's one thing Gene was always about. He was a competitor. And, we had running backs like Albert Cole. But I remember the day before I signed to go to Edinboro, I got my test scores back and I got like an 850. And, I remember Gene coming the next day to the house and signing me right then. So, those are memories I'll never forget, man. Those are really good times because, it was a struggle with that SAT test. And, I found a way to score to get the scores needed. So, I'll say this, had I had the 850 earlier, we probably wouldn't even be having this podcast right now because I wouldn't even know Ron. I'm just being real. So, I'd have probably been at Kent State or Akron. But, my thing is God's always got a plan. And, it's been a great plan. So, I have no regrets at all. Trust me.
You to where you are today. And, if you want to give a little bit of insight into 18, 19-year-old Ron Allen, coming into the program, that'll be good too.
So you want my experience at Edinboro when I came in there?
Yeah.
To me, Edinboro, and I was talking to Ron about this earlier, Edinboro changed my life. You have to, I want you to picture this now, Dallas. Leaving Baldwin, I left Baldwin when you could count the amount of black people on our hands. I'm just going to keep it real. So, I get to Edinboro and now there's 850 of us. So my mind is like, wow, there's 850 black people. But guess what? We're still the minority. You know what I'm trying to say? So, but it changed my life. The team, just being around the team and the guys, it was a great experience. I think Dan Gerlach is still my favorite coach. Here's a guy that always repeated himself. And man, you got to get it up. You got to get it up. You got to run in the hole. He used to repeat himself constantly. And, Gerlach used to always say, first thing on the field is, hey, it's a great day to be alive today. You know what I'm trying to say? And, it's funny. To this day, as a coach, I'm repeating myself like Dan Gerlach. So it's kind of funny on that. But I think now Ron played DB, and Ron was solid. Now he was solid. But we had a stout defense too, and Ron will tell you, our defense was. Dallas, they used to kick our ass daily, and I mean that on everything I love. They used to put it on us during the week, and then on Saturday we'd go out there and take it to that team's defense. Does that make sense? Because to me, iron sharpens iron. So I just I got a lot of respect for what them guys did over there on the defensive side. And it's kind of funny. I went from being an offensive coach to now I'm a defensive coordinator, and I think that's kind of strange. But I love defense now. Like, to me, it's so much simpler. Offense it's always the game of what if. You don't know what they're going to line up. You think you got a great play, and that's not really a good play. You know what I mean? So I like being the aggressor on defense. But
well, and to your point, I know it in order to be a good defensive guy, you have to know offense. right?
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
you have to, and vice versa as well.
Mhm.
Definitely.
So I want to pop in and get your take and your perspective. You know, you got me thinking with some of the things that you said. You know, when you come from an environment like Baldwin, and then you're thrust into what is Edinboro, and you're coming in really on the earlier end of Coach Holman's tenure. But you know, I know for me, I wanted to be D1 so bad, you know, so to have D2 end up as my best choice, I came in with a little bit of a chip and a certain level of arrogance, because in my mind I was playing at a lower, less than level.
Mhm.
But you know, you cross paths with a lot of names that are stamped in the record book, and you've led the way for guys who got a lot of glory. You know, playing that position as a fullback, being a lead blocker, running in between the tackles, opening up holes, giving up of your body so someone else can, you know, move the chains or cross the goal line. Did you have to develop into being that team first guy and being a sacrificial guy, or were you did you embrace that? You know, because you're talking about Albert Cole, you're talking about Larry Jackson,
Lester
like
Fry.
Corey Hill, all
Lester
those
Fry.
guys.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. I mean, when you take a role like that, you have to just say, you know what? I looked at it from this standpoint. I'm not on the sideline. Does that make sense? I'm on the field. So I'm going to do whatever I got to do to stay on the field. So it upset me if we didn't get the first down, or I missed a block, or does that make sense? I mean, and, you know, like I tell my high school kids now who play offense, hey guys, understand this. You better get a team. It's got to be a team game, because guess what? There's only one football and you have to share it. And a lot of kids don't understand it. It's really bad now in this day and age because everybody's about me. Does that make sense? Social media has created a monster with all that. But I mean, I think for me, I enjoyed just being another guy on the team. Does that make sense? And football is about the team, period. I don't care how you draw it up. It's always about the team first, and teams got to go first. You know, that's kind of why I love coaching defense now, because it takes 11 guys for our defense to be great and for our defense to be elite. I look at guys that play offense. You know, entitlement can be the enemy of hard work, and that's one thing we pride ourselves on here at Brunswick. Is just, I don't want you guys to feel like you're entitled. Our mantra on defense is eat off the floor, you know, because I want you guys to have that eat off the floor mentality. Does that make sense? So I mean, that's kind of why I guess that's my fullback type of mentality. But you know, because to me it was just about, look, I'm gonna do whatever I have to do to help us win. I like winning. I mean,
you know, so we certainly enjoy a lot of competition, a lot of great moments. You know, you got to experience those playoffs up there. We didn't come out on the favorable side of that, but then there's the other side of the school, you know, the academic side, and then the social side. You know, you were already a member of Alpha Phi Alpha when I was arriving at Edinboro, and I remember you being a guy that I may not have always commented, I may not always vocalize my thoughts of you, but I did watch and observe, because I've always gravitated towards people that are trustworthy and solid men and solid individuals. So, you know, my observation of you, I always thought of you as a guy who was a little bit more mature than other guys in the peer set. You know, when I look back at it now as a 50-year-old man and think of, you know, how you carried yourself and how you went about your business on a daily basis, you know, you were kind of a step or two ahead of where others were at that same age. You know, what does alpha mean to you? And, you know, what has that done for your self identity, your outlook on life in general? How has that aided and benefited you?
I think joining the fraternity has, I don't know, it's enhanced me. You know what I'm trying to say? It's like, again, I mean, I can't say enough about the group of guys that I came into the fraternity with. We're still friends to this day. We still contact each other, and that's the biggest thing. To me, as you grow older, it's about service and giving back to the community, and that's the biggest thing that I get out of being off. I mean, still serving to this day. I'm in the grad chapter down here in Brunswick, Georgia. We just had our reunion in Baltimore, and we were still doing service. My fraternity brothers just had a reunion in Cleveland this past weekend, and you're still doing service by giving your time back to folks that are in need, whether it be through like the food bank, or I know Russ just had one this past weekend as far as a clothing giving clothes back to people that need that. So I mean, that to me is what it's all about. It's not about walking around at the parties and stuff like that. I mean, that was when I was younger, you know what I'm trying to say. But I think as you come through the fraternity, it's about the ultimate thing, and that's service, giving back. So I mean, that's one thing I can always say that I'm grateful to, as far as to be a part of, is to be a part of a group of guys that are always trying to give back and making this community just a little bit better.
So, you know, some of those key guys, that are brothers of yours through that process, not only were they great football players, but, you know, you've got some guys that have really elevated themselves and they wear that badge proudly. And, I don't know, I can't name all of them from top to bottom, but the ones that stand out and, you keep an eye on what they're doing, the Mike Barnes, the George Lewises, Walt Reep is doing great things. Andre Dillard is doing great things. I ran into Anthony Ross down here a couple years ago, and, you see guys and you can go back in your memory banks and remember when they were young and, everybody's in attack mode, but then you see that transition into manhood and fatherhood and being leaders beyond the football field. Mario Houston, another guy who was vicious on the field, but a good man when you talk to him outside of that process. Yeah. What are your reflections and what are your thoughts on some of those individuals that, rode that ride with you?
I mean, I look at people like Walt Reep, Georgie Lou, Mike B, especially in the education aspect. They've really, AJ, Aaron Johnson, I'm referring to, these are people that have done some significant stuff in just the education field, and they are finding ways to still leave their imprint on society. I look at what Walt's done. I mean, he's like the first Black Jesuit high school principal, or something like that. But I mean, you're just you're finding ways to break through that fold and to show folks that, hey, we can do this. And, it just keeps you hungry. Like I did a little bit earlier, it's enabled me to want to go and obtain my doctorate degree in sports management. I mean, you got to always have that thirst in bettering yourself, and then, again, providing for your family and things of that nature. So, I mean, that's what the fraternities taught me, as far as just always try to find the next step. Does that make sense? And that's what the fraternity's done for me.
And, so transitioning from being a player, right, talking about graduating and getting into education, and we were talking before we started recording, being in coaching for I think you said 28 years.
Yeah.
Right. What have you taken from your coaching experience in being at different responsibilities, from assistant to a head coach to a coordinator, and being an educator and coaching the kids, teaching the kids that you're coaching? What are some of the things that you've taken from that?
When it comes to coaching, I think I've always been whatever capacity I was in, I always had to just fall in line. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not here to ruffle feathers. I'm just here to do my job. All right. I remember, going back to my first coaching career, I started off as a running back coach, and then when I went to Maryland, I still stayed in that position coach type of role. And then as I got back down to Charlotte, I ended up getting a job at being a running backs coach at Independence High School in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I'll be honest with you, I learned a lot from 2003 to 2005 working under head coach Tommy Knotts, probably one of the greatest coaches I've ever worked before in my life. He showed you the work ethic on what it takes to win consistently, and the work ethic on what you're going to have to do to win the highest level, as to be in the championship type of coach. It was kind of like, are you talking about working some crazy hours? We worked some crazy hours at Independence. I remember in the championship time when you're coaching and it's getting dark at 5:00. We're still watching film till about 7:30 as a staff. That's crazy to me. You know what I mean? And I told myself, whenever I become a head coach, am I going to do that? Probably not, because guess what? I just feel like we have to live as coaches. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, football is everything, but it can't be working until 8, 9 o'clock. I think that's a little bit crazy. Okay. That's just my personal opinion. But it's taught me a lot. Even as a coordinator, I say this, my first head coaching job, I learned a lot. I learned that you hire the right people around you, because if you don't, you're going to fail. You're going to fail rapidly. And what happens is you end up putting an island around yourself, and you feel like you can fix everything, and you can't. And then, just those times where I've gone from being a head coach, and then after you're being a head coach, now you're at a coordinator. I actually took time to just watch how other head coaches things differently. Does that make sense? Because you are, to me, life's about learning, and I think as coaches, we all need to learn, because guess what? Even I tell my defensive staff now, hey guys, I don't know everything. My thing is we can let's look at this collectively, and then I'll decide whether or not it's what's best for our team and our kids. Does that make sense? I'm not saying I'm a dictator, but I am open to ideas, and I think that's the healthiest way in coaching in today's game, in my opinion.
Well, I'll be honest with you, sitting there listening to you, and then circling back to one of my first questions about, as Ron said, the dichotomy of who you are, right? Like, and I referenced the confidence that you have and over my career, getting input and not being the dictator in a leadership role is confidence in who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Agree.
Acknowledging that, hey, you know what? I don't know everything. And some of the people that work with you may have some good ideas, but then you got to kind of filter it.
I agree.
That's great leadership. Right. And one of the things I always thought about, so, I started out as an assistant coach, and then I went on to become a head coach. And, right after I was a head coach, I went into administration, but I always felt that had I become an assistant coach again, I would have been a much better assistant coach, because I could identify with what that head coach needs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I never experienced that, but I believe you have. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I mean, to me, I felt like I've taken the natural progression. I went from being an assistant coach. My first time I was a coordinator was at Queen Anne's County High School, and I think that was probably like my third or fourth year. So, and I had to learn. I knew what my head coach wanted, but I really wanted to kind of implement some of my ideas that we could run the ball, and they did work, but he was so ingrained in, we've got to do it this way. You know what I mean? So, and it was cool, but it let me know that, you've got to be open to ideas, and sometimes some people want to hear it and some people don't want to hear it. I'm just going to be real. So, I mean, it is what it is,
Being a northern bred and raised guy, what's that culture shock like for you early on, transitioning with a steel town, 3 yards in a cloud of dust mentality, the experience of playing as a player in the PSAC during our era and our time? How do you make the adjustment to being in those different states, being in those different environments, and adapting to some of what may be the tradition in those parts, but being able to put your stamp on it? Have you had any periods where you've had to give and take, being a guy coming from Pennsylvania down into those other parts of the country?
Well, I'll say this, Ron. I mean, I don't think like moving from Pittsburgh to down here, first thing you got to do is just understand the situation that you're going into. Like I said, I started off as an assistant coach, and sometimes those guys let me know, hey, you're just going to be an assistant coach. I don't need no input from you, and we're just going to leave it at that. So, I mean, and that was cool. But I also took the time to learn. Now, the situations where I was put in like leadership type positions, either as a coordinator, as a head coach, you just have to do what your kids are good at. I think some coaches feel like and this is probably anywhere, but I mean, some coaches feel like, yeah, well, we're going to run this type of offense because that's all you know. And the thing about it is, it doesn't fit the scheme of what your kids can do. I think you have to, if your players adapt as far as the type of kids that you're getting, I think as a coach, you have to adapt your scheme to your players. I remember when I first came to Brunswick High School, we were a 4-man front, but our inside linebackers were not very good. We just weren't very good. I mean, we ended up making the playoffs. We went 6-6, but I could see the writing on the wall, especially in the freshman class that came after them. And I did something about it. And, we now are a 3-4 team, and it's paid dividends, since then. I mean, I remember that next year we went 8-4. The next year after that, we went 11-1. The next year after that, we went 10-1, but it's really been, I just think you have to create stuff that is good for your kids. And I look at this year coming up. I think we're really good with our D linemen. We're heavy with our D line, and there are going to be times where I might come out in a 4-man front of just D linemen. You know what I'm trying to say? Because you got to use what's good on your team. And
my last question springing off of that is, as a coach, how do you keep that balance of, keeping your mental health top peak condition and then your physical health? Have there been any positives or negatives that come with a long sustained coaching career where you've worn those different hats in those different roles?
Yeah. I think first thing you got to do, I'm finding out more about this now, you got to have a great support system. My fiance right now she is my rock. I mean, she allows me just to do what I need to do. She understands that, hey, when it's football time, it's football time. But at the same time, you still have to spend time in just being a family man. Does that make sense? Because I mean, and she keeps me grounded as far as either with date night, like we're about to head on date night this week because it's a dead week, and I got to take advantage of that time because once I get done with this dead week, I'm back in the grind. Does that make sense? Because I mean, I'm gonna have blinders on, and it's straight football from here until whenever. So you got to start with your support system first. Number two, high blood pressure is something that, as all African American men, we all face, and I am here to let you know I gotta take care of myself. I have found ways of dealing with that as far as making sure that I'm getting the exercise that I need. I'm actually been back in the weight room. I'm pumping iron, and I'm feeling pretty good about myself. I told my kids, I said, by mid-July, I'm about to go viral because I'm about to show the world I can do 225, 5 reps. And I know what how these kids are going to do. Their phones are going to be out, and you're going to see it on. I promise you, you're going to see this on TikTok. I guarantee it. I guarantee it, because a lot of my kids, they see all this wisdom right here, and they think that I just don't have it in the weight room right now. And I'm about to show them, that I still got it. And then you got to find time to get some cardio in. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Ron, I'm not running anymore. I'm not doing that because when I run, my knees look at me. My knees look up at me, and they be like, "Hey, man, what are we doing?" Like, I don't want to run. So I do a lot of walking. I think you can get a lot done in a mile and a half, and it's got to be at a brisk pace. I think those are some ways that it's allowed me to sustain the time that I've had so far in coaching.
I've thought about it. Like, I would like to go back and be an O-line or D-line coach. Give me my 5-7 guys. Let me love them up. Let me get them better. But it's been 10, 12 years since I've done it. And I shouldn't say kids have changed, but society's changed.
It has. It has.
The perspective has changed. So I don't know if I could pick it up 10, 12 years after the fact and with the tools that I have in my toolbox and be effective. But, it's all about relationships, right? At the end of the day. But, yeah, I don't know. It's really a strange time in things. And, what you see going on in college sports with colleges making a ton of money. Should the guys make money? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But, I think all of us have learned multiple lessons from the difficulties that we went through in the process of being an athlete that have paid tons of dividends. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a great point. I don't know. I agree with you. And I've talked to my son, like, maybe I'm just getting old and time has passed me by and I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's kind of gotten off the rails, with just, you said it earlier, it's a me game now, right? There's not enough footballs to go around and everybody wants an opportunity to have their Instagram and TikTok highlights, and that's just not how it is. Life is not that way, Yeah.
I remember having a conversation with my defensive players, and I told them, I said, if any of y'all put highlights of you in a game that we lost in, I'm gonna have a problem with that. Does that make sense? Like, don't do that. Don't do that. Like, you're making it about you, and I don't care about you. I care about this team and this program. I think kids want discipline. You know why? Because guess what? They're not getting it at the house. I promise you that. They're not doing it. They want discipline. So guess what? I'm going to tell you what you're not going to do. And I want you to try me. And if I find out, I'm going to discipline you. Because that's just how I see it.
So with that stance, there has to be support from the higher ups to support you to do that. Or do you have the autonomy to do that?
I mean, I'm gonna say this right now with the program that I'm at right now. Yes, I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm grateful for that. Coach Grady he trusts me. I'm not going to go outside the box and bring attention to myself where it's going to put a black eye on the program, but you're going to run. And sometimes Coach Grady's out there with me, but you're going to run. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's either the Brunswick way or we can part ways. I'm gonna just tell it the way it is.
Well, I think those are the lessons that are kind of lost now in at the end of the day, we all make choices, right?
That's right.
We all make choices. And I think that's where educators and coaches used to be a honorable profession and appreciated. And I think, that dynamic's changing a little bit depending where you are and what the dynamics are. And I think those are the tough lessons that we all, in one form or fashion, need to learn that make us better men and women as we go forward.
I agree. I agree.
I do have one other question for you.
Sure.
And this is a bit of a selfish question. So, you know, I deal with, you know, a lot of candidates and people applying for jobs, and, you know, you've been around quite a bit, right? Like you've been at different places and you've had different experiences, and that's a positive. But one of the things that always comes up when I see people that have been different places, I always wonder why. And, so I'm just going to ask you in a candid where there's nothing at stake, right? You're not trying to get a job. You know, what was kind of your motivation for going different places, having different experiences, from Maryland down to Florida? You know, what was kind of something that motivated you to do that?
Really, I mean, and you know, it's kind of funny because I've had that question before, because my mom has always asked me, don't you think you need to just settle down somewhere? Like, you keep jumping from job to job, like eventually that's going to catch up. I don't know. I've always looked at my resume, and the job that the next job that I went to was always something better for me as a coach. Does that make sense?
Sure.
I think after a while, I used to ask myself, are you a music teacher that coaches football, or a football coach that knows a little bit about music? And I think now, I don't know. I just think I just love doing what I'm doing. You know what I'm trying to say? And I'll be honest with you, right now at Brunswick, I'm having the time of my life. Like, I'm having fun. I don't even feel like it's a job, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm having fun. And that, I think if you can find peace doing that, and that's a blessing to me, in my opinion.
I appreciate that
Yeah.
that sentiment.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always been get to the next thing that's going to elevate myself in my career. That's really just been my motivation. Like, you know, and I'll be honest with you. I think eventually I'd like to get back in the big chair again. I'm just going to keep it real, but it's got to be a good job. I just don't want to have a job. Does that make sense? I want a good
completely
job. Right.
You know, I've had a couple guys that have asked me about different jobs, and, you know, especially in my role, you know, my advice to them was, you know, when you go for an interview, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you.
That's correct.
Like, is it a cultural fit? Do my philosophies fit with you? Because if I'm just going in there and answering every question to get the job, eventually it's going to end up bad for somebody.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right.
Yep.
You know, I just think I just don't want to have just a job just to say, oh yeah, well, Coach Tedder is back being a head coach. No, I want a good job,
right,
where I can sit there and say, this is where I want to be. But, you know, again, it comes down to one thing. If it's in God's plan, then so be it. If not, it's okay. I'm still good. You know what I mean?
You know, as you put that point on that, you've certainly had a long trajectory, varied experiences. I know the type of individual you were as a player, and the mentality and the toughness that you brought to the game. When you look back over the course of that span, you know, if you had that one more down to do for yourself, you know, how would you set that scenario up? What would that be for you?
And I told this to you, Ron, the other day, and I'm gonna say it again, so Dallas can hear this story. So, it's homecoming weekend at the Borough, and really the story is really going to just come down to discipline. And so that, you know, I probably might teach this to my players about how important discipline is, that you're there for the team. And I'll never forget, it's homecoming weekend at the Borough. We're about to play Clarion. And my fraternity decides, oh yeah, we're going to have the alpha party Friday night. And I'm like, why? Why Friday night? So I'm in my dorm room and I'm seeing everyone's flocking to the university center. And I'm just like, man, I really want to be there. I really want to be there. Now, the discipline side should have been what? Stay your behind up in the room, right? So I didn't stay in the room. I said, look, I'm just going to step for a little bit, just a little bit. And Ron, you know, stepping really puts a pounding on your knees, you know, especially if you start getting height, you know, it goes from a stroll to I'm hitting the ground. Does that make sense? Like, boom. I mean, this is what it's going to be. And Dallas, I went in there and stepped, and it got to the point I'm sweating. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't put in some work. All right. So leave, go home, game day. And I'll never forget it. It was a pass play, and I'm planting my leg to the right, but then the linebacker's cutting inside of me to my left, and my leg is one way and I'm going the other way, tear my ACL. So I say all that to say this. Had I been disciplined and not gone to the party, I would probably have a better knee than I have on my right knee now. Does that make sense? So if I had one more down, to me, my story just comes down to discipline, you know, and you have to do what's right, and you have to do what's best for the betterment of the team. And that was my one time that I was selfish, and I ended up hurting myself. And then, you know, the rehab was my punishment, because that was grueling work, to the point where I had to find a way to get myself back on the field. And I managed to do it. But, you know, you're not quite yourself after, I mean, because now you got to wear that big monstrosity of a knee brace, and, you know, you got to do all that stuff. So, I mean, I came back, but I just felt like I lost a step. Does that make sense? So, I mean, you know, that's my one more down. That's my one more down story right there. Be disciplined.
You know, that perspective says a lot, because, you know, when we get to look with that backwards lens, and it's almost like watching film after a big win or a bad loss, right? You can point out and study all the things that you could have done differently or done better, but it's really a metaphor for life. And what I take from that, by you saying that, is, you know, don't miss your opportunities. You know what I'm saying? And if you have those inner feelings about what you should be doing versus what you're doing, you know, those are forks where you get to pick left or right, you know. But as players, as coaches, as fathers, we know that whatever you do, you have to live with the outcome, and then you have to keep going forward.
That's right.
You know, 28 years in coaching, you know, a lot of different experiences, you know, a guy that has to put himself in the mind of a coordinator, a head coach, or teaching a music lesson. You know, what are some of those things that you want to be said about you when whenever that day comes that you decide to stop being an active coach, or, you know, when you wrap up your career in teaching, you know, what would you like to be able to do and look back and say about what you've done up to that point?
You know, honestly, I just want to make sure that I've made a lasting impression on society and that I've impacted kids in a positive way. You know, I mean, currently I'm doing like credit recovery for kids that are who have not have done what they're supposed to do in the classroom. And I'm just trying to help them along as far as getting that credit so they're able to graduate. So I always ask them, what are you trying to do with yourself? What's your end goal? And I just feel like you've got to show them the way, and then lead them that way so that they can accomplish the goal that, you know, that they've set out to. You know, and I've said this already about my own self, like, you know, I've always had that mindset of I know what I want to do, and you've got to instill that in these kids in today's society, because there's a lot of folks that are trying to steer them in paths that are going to be detrimental to them later on in life. So I just hope that I have done what I'm supposed to do as far as laying the foundation to impacting their life. And, you know, some from kids about what I've done for them, and it's meant a lot to me. So, I mean, I just hope that I can continue to do that in a positive way.
You know, I certainly appreciate the man that you've been, and then, you know, I'm more proud of the fact that you've maintained and you've never switched up. You know, the guy that I'm here listening to now got gray beard on his face. It's the same exact guy, you know, that I was wondering, hey, do I want to go back up in there and meet head to head, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I wish you much success. I hope you find those ways to keep staying motivated, keep staying driven. And then, you know, more importantly, I hope that you leave those same, that same leadership that you provided us as younger guys coming up through the college ranks with the guys that you're impacting and crossing paths with now. So I thank you very much for being a guest tonight. And, you know, just appreciate the person that you are and have always been as far as I'm concerned.
And guys, I want to say thank you. Dallas, it was a privilege meeting you. I hope we can do this again sometime. Ron, man, I've been excited about this whole day. I was like, man, I can't wait till 6 o'clock. So, I mean, it's really been fun. I hope we can do this again and, you know, shoot the Bobo again.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And you know, to your point, the last point you made, you know, as educators, we plant seeds that we may never see grow, right? And
that's right.
And you're definitely doing it. And it's been really, really honestly inspiring to kind of hear your story and just hear some of your insights. So, you know, it was great meeting you too. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, man. Ron, you need to take that